In this video, I'm going to be walking you guys through exactly what Lando Norris needs to do to win this race. Remember, there's the lap time and there's the conversion. Two very different skill sets. Let me set the table for you guys. The exam question that Lando answered as at qualifying in 2025 Australian Grand Prix was one of pure lap time. Do you have the pace? Can you brake, corner, accelerate, turn, drive the right line under pressure in Q3 and deliver the lap? The answer to that question for Lando has most often been a resounding yes. But then on Sundays, the exam question, particularly in the rain, if we're going to get it, is one that's going to be very different. It's going to switch from technical to tactical. What is tactical? How you manage and operate the race, your starts, your attack, your defense, your strategy, your restarts, your mindset, your mistakes. It's going to be all on that side of the fence. He's going to need to answer for a very different question. Now, Lando's come out this year saying he's ready for a world championship. He said he feels like a more complete driver. And I think if we get some rain tomorrow, we're going to see exactly that. If you're interested in what my thoughts are and how Lando can win this race, definitely keep watching. Welcome back to the channel, guys. My name is Martin. I'm a specialist technical coach and mentor for open formula drivers. Like we say, there's a very different skill set required if he's going to convert this one into a win on a street circuit on a rainy Sunday in Melbourne. It's going to be the biggest challenge of all challenges. I think it's going to be up there with what happened in Brazil last year, and that was our last wet race that we're going to lean on and draw to for some reference. Let's just have a quick look at the weather and see if I can give you guys an update as to what the latest could be. Hopefully you can see that on the screen in front of you. So we got Sunday, the 16th of March, 22 to 24, 8 to 20 millimeters expected and a 95% chance of any precipitation. If we read the description, cloudy, a warm morning, followed by cool and windy change, most likely during the late morning. Exactly, that's pretty much just before race start. If we have a look at the radar, what's going on currently around Australia, where we are is down here where my cursor is. I hope you can see that on the screen, but you've got this band moving through. That's what we're expecting to hit like tonight, tomorrow, and settle into tomorrow. So look, I think we're going to be looking at showers potentially. It's going to come and go, and you're going to have to deal with drying tracks and wet tracks. It's going to be a massive challenge for Lando. Let's start and get into some of the things that he's going to need to amend for and the questions he's going to need to answer tomorrow. Okay, so the first on my list, and if we cast our mind back to Brazil 2024, the first on my list is procedural. What are the things that you need to do when the safety car happens, when the red flag happens, when the lights are flashing yellow, aborted start? Does that mean go or not go? What if there's a crash on the warm-up lap? What if he spins? What if it's a start underneath the safety car? Like, in what situations and what conditions does Lando need to do what? Now, you might sound totally silly to you, but look, the driver spends so much time trying to work out how to drive the cars quickly, which Lando can obviously do. They spend less time, reading through the rule book. What happens if I can't get the car off the line? Can I reclaim my position? All of these things are what Lando needs to check for procedurally. Now, cast your mind back, like I say, to Brazil 2024. The lights were flashing yellow. It was an aborted start. Under those circumstances, Lando's required to stay in place, and he doesn't. He drives off. Some of the other cars drive off. Some of them also stay in place, and it was a big confusion before the race even started. In theory, Lando should have got a penalty for that, but he didn't, luckily. So I think procedurally, he needs to brush up, and that in and of itself is going to take time. I've got so many other things on my list, but that's what they're going to need to be going over just before the race tomorrow. Now, the second on my list is, of course, start. Now, Lando, just in the dry, generally speaking, all of last year had terrible starts. He got a bad start in Netherlands, bad start in Hungary. Austin, Max got up the inside of him. There was a few more, I think Spain in there as well. There was a few more races where Lando got bad starts in the dry. Then Brazil 2024, again being our most recent data point, it was only about 200 meters before Lando lost the lead of that race to George Russell, who got up the inside from P2. So it's not only is it got a lot involved in the dry in terms of dialing in the correct RPM, reacting to the lights, your throttle shape, when you shift up to second gear, all of these things, your tire temperatures, the number of burnouts, where you line up on the grid. Not only is that like present, but now you've got the wet to deal with as well. And there's extra challenges, maybe a different throttle shape. Maybe you start in second gear with more revs. Is second gear with more revs better than first gear and lower revs? These are the questions in which Lando and McLaren are going to need to answer for. Now, like I say, it's wet, so it could be wet. Most likely will be wet according to our forecast. So what does that mean? Does that mean that Oscar might potentially have more grip being off the racing line? I'd argue it should be 50-50. It should be quite equal. Remember, the rubber only gets laid down in the heavy braking zones, in the heavy traction zones, in the heavy cornering zones. When the cars are just coming past down the pit straight, I don't think they're laying down rubber per se. I could be wrong though. I could be wrong. We've had so many cars this weekend going around that track. There could be a lot more rubber on that racing line down the pit straight than what Oscar will find in P2. So there you go, guys. That's another insight for you as well. Lando's going to need a cracker of a start. Now, what would I be recommending? Angle your car across to the inside as quickly as possible. Not only do you want to get in there and down there on the inside and break off the rubber into turn one, but you want to defend Oscar getting up the inside and doing that. If you get a bad start, that's going to be like your insurance. You need to get to the inside. I said it all last year. You need to trade pole position, which is useless to you, for track position, which is a lot more valuable. And from track position, from the inside in the lead, you can control and manage turn one a lot better. I'd love to see Lando just slightly point his car to the right and then shoot across in Oscar's space, so that if Oscar does get a good launch, he's got no choice but to go around the outside. That's where all the rubber is. We know that that's the racing line, and it's going to be hard to make an overtake from that position. So let's see if Lando can manage to do that off the start tomorrow, if indeed it is wet. Now, the third exam question Lando is going to be asked is, of course, one of attack and defense, exactly what we just spoke about off the line. But then just let's say he does keep the lead, then just in general combat as well. He's going to need to defend his position. If he gets overtaken, he's going to need to execute clean overtakes. Both attack and defense are so much harder in the rain, not only because it might be wetter in some parts than others or more grip in some parts than others, but you could be on an old intermediate tire and then have to overtake someone around the outside on a slightly wet part of the track. You could be on new dry tires against someone that's on old intermediate tires and have to overtake someone on a slightly more damp part of the track. Attack and defense is going to be a massive challenge for Lando. So it's his risk appetite as well. Not only is he going to need the procedural and the starts nailed in, but he's also going to need to be razor sharp in attack and defense, defend his territory a lot better than what he did in 2024. That's something which I'm looking for tomorrow as well. Now, not to mention the two guys behind him are Oscar Piastri, who's not afraid to go around Lando. We saw that in Monza at the second chicane, starts to attack Lando in the second braking zone, and Lando was a little bit cautious, under brakes there into the second braking zone, the second chicane in Monza. It's Oscar who's going to be, if you give him an inch, he'll take a mile. And then, of course, you got Max Verstappen in P3. Of course, he's going to Max is like a shark in the water. Of course, he's going to be coming at those two McLarens. And Max is brilliant in the wet. You can guarantee he's going to be the good starts. He's going to settle in. He's going to find his rhythm. He'll have lap time. He'll know how to attack and defend and look after his tires. Max is going to be excellent tomorrow. So Lando's going to need to defend against, not maybe Charles or Lewis. It's going to be Oscar and Max. So I just wanted to highlight that they're not just any two guys behind him. These are two of the sharpest drivers in terms of racecraft that we have on the grid behind him. Now, look, the other thing Lando needs to keep an eye on is the flag points. Like I said in one of my videos this weekend, that's what your track walk is for. You need to keep an eye on the flag points. Where are the yellow flags if you expect them to pop out at all? Lando can't afford to do another Qatar, that is keep his foot flat through a yellow flag. And he can't afford to do another Baku as well, where he gave the yellow flags too much respect. He's going to need to know where those flag points are beforehand, get familiar with them, so that when they do come out, he's like, oh, there should be a flag point there. His eyes are kind of more broadly open and scanning the track because he knows where the flag points are. In Qatar, like I said, he just drove through a clean double yellow flag, not once, but twice. And in Baku, he was presented with a yellow flag when he could see the car in front. And then all he had to do was just pretty much lift, and he still could have made it through into Q2 or Q3, I believe it was. Now, the other thing that Lando needs to do with the flags is realize that they're not active unless it's the point at which you pass through. He was presented a white flag and a flashing yellow flag in Baku that he did not go through. And at the point which he went through, the white flag went out and the yellow flag changed and became green. He's going to need to be on the ball with the flags, guys. And it was 2 mistakes or 3 mistakes last year under flag situations and just reading the flags. That's something that's going to be a challenge in the rain. He's going to need to be switched on. I would encourage just getting familiar with where the flag boards are and where the flag marshal posts are at the very least, and then just brushing up on, okay, if it's yellow, maybe a lift. If it's double yellow, okay, lift and brake, be prepared to stop. If it's white, what's the oil flag, red and white, and all these sort of flags. It's going to need to just brush up on those as well and not make any mistakes in that area. Okay, so tire management. Now, if you can look after your tires in the rain, it's going to give you more strategic options later in the race. Remember, he came in early in Brazil with George Russell because they felt like they were running out of tires and they felt like it was going to rain again. If you can just look after your tires, it gives you more strategic options. Like, we don't need to come in. We can afford to wait and see what the weather does and then react. I think we are going to get that changeable condition in Melbourne with a lot of showers like we saw before, on and off, a heavy and light, dry and wet, dry line, wet line, old inters, new dries. It's going to be a little bit like that. So it's going to need to look after the tires. Now, I think it's going to be one of real limitation in the wet. So in all of the traction zones, opening the steering, keeping the steering wheel straight, bleeding on the throttle nicely, short shifting, dulling the revs, getting good traction and good release off the corners. I want to see Lando playing the professional, mature, long game in this race tomorrow. Now, it goes without saying, you're going to need patience and you're going to need consistency. Ayrton Senna famously said, you need to know when to give everything you have, and then you need to know when to keep everything you have. It's going to be a race of that tomorrow. When do you give everything you have and show off your pace because a car behind has just pitted, or you need to overcut or undercut someone? Sometimes you do need to raise the risk bar just for a lap or two, like Checo Perez did in Monaco a few years ago. Ability to just put in 2 or 3 laps that allowed him to undercut and get into the race lead, but then go into the mode of keep everything you have and then dial the volume down a little bit as well. So Lando's going to need to play with that in terms of consistency, and he's going to need to be patient at some points as well, not react to a shower. Like if a shower comes in and just drenches the track, there's no point coming in for wets. If in 5 laps, the sun comes out in Melbourne, that's going to dry out. You're going to have to be really patient as well. I want to see Lando execute those 2 things, consistency and patience. Now, look, he's also going to need to dial down the unforced error count. In Brazil last year, the last wet race that we had, I think he made 2 unforced errors, braking into turn 1 and braking into turn 4. So things like your brake balance, just starting it further forward and then slowly bringing it back as the race goes on. Braking gently, braking progressively, using more of your engine braking, staying off the white lines. The mistakes really need to be turned down in the wet. It's such a fine line between how do you push and manage the pace and look after the tires, but then how do you manage the risk and then minimize the unforced errors as well. This is defining what champions are, guys. They don't just get it done with the best car on a dry afternoon. They get it done sometimes in not the best car, on a wet Sunday in Melbourne as well. You're going to need to answer for both of those questions if you want to be lifting a trophy of the world champions variety at the end of the year. Now, I think this is a big one, guys. One of the questions he's going to need to answer for is safety car restarts. If we get a safety car, Lando's going to need to control and manage the temperatures. He's going to need to know when to go, how to hold up the person behind him, if that's Oscar or Max. And if he does fall behind in P2 or P3, how to do the opposite, how to attack P1 or P2 in that situation. He's going to need to go slightly wider on the last corner, get a good run, get a good drive, and then try to start to attack and put pressure on the people in front of him. And if he's leading, which he hopefully should be, then it's going to be the opposite. How to defend, how to prevent the other guy from getting a good run of you on the safety car restart. Where is the safety car restart line? When is it active? When should you let the safety car go into the pits? All of these I's need to be dotted and T's need to be crossed. Max is a master in this area of safety car restarts. Lando needs to brush up on this tonight. Hopefully while I'm filming this video, Lando's doing exactly that. Now, not only do you need everything we've just spoken about in terms of starts, attack, defense, restarts, you need lap time to underline and support all of these tactical elements. You also need to be quick at times during the race. Remember Brazil last year, not only did Max get a good start and have good attack and defense and good strategy and so on, he also went on to set 17 fastest laps, one after the other, after the other, after the other, and demonstrate a flourish of lap time and speed. Checo Perez, like we just spoke about, who won Monaco, also showed off lap time at some stages as well. Lando's going to need to underline everything I've just spoken about, not with lap time in the dry, but with lap time in the wet as well. So how do you do that? Well, really the most important thing and the biggest lever that you can pull is racing line. It's going to be, where do you brake, where do you rotate, and where do you accelerate? We haven't got any long corners per se in Melbourne, like Shanghai turn 1 or Hungary last corner, second last corner, etc. We haven't got long corners. You won't be able to play around as much with the short corner. I'm going to reference here the video of how Max Verstappen was so much faster than Lando Norris in 2024 Brazil, and highlight to you the corners in which Max was braking deeper, later, targeting a later apex and executing the short corner V technique. I don't think you're going to be able to do that in Melbourne. So you're going to have to come up with some other tricks. There will be times where you need to cross over the natural dry racing line, which is going to be very slippery. So then it's just going to be about survival. And that could happen maybe between turn 3 and 4. Turn 5 is very line locked, fast corner. You want to attack that corner and then lift off the throttle and roll through that corner before you get back on the throttle again. Turn 6 is another fast line lock corner that's slightly in-cambered in a little bit of a dip. There's going to be heaps of rubber down there. The curbs are painted. It's going to be challenging. Lando's going to need to work out where the fastest wet lines are, And I think Max, that's where Max is super switched on. So like I say, I'm going to leave a link to that video in the description of this one. Now, just finally, just wrapping up, if it doesn't work out for Lando and he does drop the ball on one of the areas that we've spoken about, I want to see Lando take accountability for that. Remember Brazil last year was talking about luck, and like Max was tick, 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 executed a champion's drive. And Lando comes out, it's talking about luck and things we can't control and so on. No, Lando, you need to get this one done. This is important now. You need to brush up. You should be up pretty much all night, as near as makes no difference, studying the flag points, studying the restart points, studying the wet tires and their favorite temperature, studying the wet lines, and at least as a bare minimum, if it doesn't work out, take full responsibility and accountability for this one, so that next time at least there's a better chance that you're gonna work it out. I hope you learned something from this video. If you had a thought or question, leave it in the comments section for me, and subscribe to this channel. I'll be putting out a post-race analysis tomorrow as well. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.